The great hall of Varric Castle was filled with whispers and heavy silence. Alara Marin stood before the court, her chin lifted, though her heart thumped like a war drum. The sunlight spilling through the tall windows reflected off the stone floors, making the room seem brighter than it felt. Every noble's eyes were upon her, sharp and cold, judging. She tried to keep her breathing steady. She had faced insults before, but never so public, never so humiliating. Her uncle, Lord Varin, stepped forward, his face twisted with a smirk that made her stomach turn. "You have made enough mistakes, Alara," he said in a voice loud enough for the room to hear. "It is time you learned your place." He lifted his hand and struck her across the cheek. The sound of the slap echoed through the hall, sharp and final. Gasps followed. Alara's cheek burned, not just from the hit, but from the shock and shame. She struggled to keep her face calm, but her hands shook. Before she could recover, a shadow fell over the room. The temperature seemed to drop, and a low growl rolled through the hall. All eyes turned to the entrance, where a figure moved with impossible speed and quiet authority. King Cale Varric, the Lycan king, entered. His dark hair fell over his shoulders, and his golden eyes glinted with fire and warning. The court had called him savage, untamed, dangerous, and for good reason. But in that moment, everyone understood that he was unstoppable. He strode to the front of the hall, each step echoing like thunder. His gaze locked on Lord Varin. "Touch her again and you will die," he said, his voice low but filled with absolute authority. The hall seemed to hold its breath. The nobles paled, knowing that King Cale did not make idle threats. He was the wolf who ruled the borderlands, fierce and deadly, yet bound by his own code. Alara's cheek still stung, but her eyes widened more with surprise than fear. She had not expected anyone to defend her, especially not the Lycan king. Yet here he was, standing between her and her uncle, his presence like a shield she could lean on. She did not move. She did not speak. She only stared, her mind spinning, trying to process the sudden turn of events. Lord Varin's face went pale, and he faltered. How dare you?" he began. But Cale's eyes glowed brighter, and the words died on his lips. The king's warning was not for the ears of the court alone. It was a promise. A statement of intent that left no room for argument. King Cale turned to Alara. His voice softened slightly, though it still carried the weight of command. "You are safe under my protection." The words were simple, but the meaning was extraordinary. Nobles gasped and muttered among themselves. Protection by the Lycan king was no small thing. It was a declaration that one was under his law, his will, and his power. Alara felt a strange mix of relief and indignation. She did not like being treated as a pawn or a prize, yet the sense of safety that settled over her was undeniable. Her heart had begun to calm, her breaths finding rhythm again. Still, she straightened her back, refusing to bow, refusing to show weakness. The court dispersed after that, though whispers followed her wherever she went. Some nobles envied her new protector, others despised her. She moved quietly through the corridors, aware that the castle had eyes everywhere. King Cale followed at a distance, silent and observant, his presence felt rather than seen. Later, in the privacy of a moonlit terrace, Alara confronted him. Why do you care?" she asked, her voice steady despite the confusion in her chest. The wind tugged at her hair, and the moon painted her features silver and soft. Cale's gaze was fixed on the distant mountains, his jaw tight. "Because it is my duty," he said finally, "and because no one has the right to harm you." His tone was even, but there was a fire behind it that could not be ignored. "You are bound to my protection by laws older than this court, older than your uncle's power. I will keep you safe. That is all there is to it." Alara's brow furrowed. "Bound by what law? Who says you can decide that for me?" Cale's eyes met hers, golden and fierce. "The law of blood and honor," he said quietly. "There are old pacts, old promises, and old magic that even your uncle does not understand. Your safety is my responsibility. Accept it or challenge it, but do not mistake it for cruelty or desire." She looked down at her hands clenched at her sides. The words stirred something she had not expected. Fear, yes, but also a spark of trust, fragile and new. Still, her pride would not allow her to bow. She straightened again, meeting his gaze. "I will not be a prize," she said firmly. "Not for you, not for anyone." Cale nodded slightly as if he expected no less. "Good," he said. "You must choose to walk this path with awareness, not coercion. That is why you are safe tonight. That is why I will stand between you and anyone who would harm you, even your own blood." As they spoke, a figure approached. Mara the Binder, an old woman known for her knowledge of curses and ancient magic, stepped into the terrace light. Her eyes were sharp, her robes trailing in the wind. She studied Alara closely, then murmured to herself, "The mark is awakening." Alara looked down at her wrist. There, faint but clear, was a sigil glowing softly under the moonlight. She had thought it was a simple birthmark, but now it pulsed with warmth and a quiet energy that made her skin tingle. Mara stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. "This mark? It is not ordinary. It belongs to the line of Varric blood. It carries power, old magic that binds the Lycan kings to mortals of your line. You may not understand it now, but it will change everything." Ilara's heart quickened. "Change everything? How?" Mara looked toward Kale, then back to Alara. "By choice or by fate, your path and his are linked. The bond may protect you, or it may demand a price. That is yet to be seen. But know this, your blood is key, and the Wolf King knows more than he says." Kale's expression remained calm, but his eyes softened as he reached out, gently resting a hand near hers without touching. "We will learn it together," he said. "But tonight rest. The court may have eyes, but the moon has mercy. For now you are safe." Ilara watched him turn back to the mountains, golden eyes reflecting the silver light. She did not fully understand what had happened nor what was coming, but a strange sense of destiny had settled over her. The night felt alive, as if it held secrets in every shadow, promises in every breeze. She stayed on the terrace long after Kale left. The moonlight bathed the castle in a soft glow, and the mark on her wrist seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. A question stirred in her mind. Why her? Why had the Lycan king intervened so fiercely? And what did the ancient magic want from her? The answer would not come tonight. But as she traced the sigil with her fingertip, feeling the warmth and faint vibration, she realized one truth. Her life had changed irrevocably. The court slap had been only the beginning. The world beyond the castle walls was darker, stranger, and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. A sound broke her thoughts, a low, almost mournful howl carried on the wind from the forest beyond the mountains. She shivered. It was not threatening, but it was a call, a reminder that the wilderness, the wolf, and the old magic were waiting. Alara drew a deep breath. She could not run from this fate nor from the protection offered. She would not be a prize, she told herself firmly. She would face what came with her head high, her spirit unbroken. The moonlight touched her face, silver and pure, and the sigil glowed faintly against her skin. Somewhere out there, King Kale Varric watched and waited, and the bond of old magic, stronger than any human law, had begun to pulse with life. The night was only the beginning, and in the distance, the howl of the wolf rose again, sharp and warning, echoing across the mountains and valleys. It was a sound that promised both danger and protection, a promise of fury and loyalty, and a signal that the story was far from over. Alara clenched her fists, a mixture of fear and determination burning within her. She would not be defeated by her uncle, by the court, or by the ancient forces that now tugged at her blood. She would face the coming storm, step by step. With courage she did not yet fully recognize. The moon shone brightly above, and in its silver light, the first threads of destiny began to weave themselves around the girl who had been slapped, shamed, and now fiercely protected. The night had whispered its warning, and Alara listened. Tomorrow would bring questions, challenges, and revelations. But tonight she was alive. Tonight she was free, and the Lycan king's eyes, burning golden even in her imagination, were a reminder that she was not alone. The morning after the court scandal, the castle seemed quieter, but the air was heavy with tension. Ilara Marin walked through the stone corridors, trying to make sense of the events from the night before. The mark on her wrist pulsed faintly, as if reminding her that her life had changed. Every step she took echoed softly, a reminder of the weight of her new reality. She entered the small library where she often went to think. The walls were lined with tall shelves of books, some old enough to crumble at the touch, others filled with maps and ancient records. She ran her fingers over the spines, feeling the smooth leather and rough cloth, searching for guidance she did not know existed. A shadow fell across the floor. She looked up to see King Kale Varric standing in the doorway. His golden eyes were calm but alert, and the tension in his posture made her pulse quicken. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, carrying both command and care. Alara frowned. "About what?" The court, my uncle? The mark? All of it, he replied. He stepped closer, careful to maintain a respectful distance, though the sheer presence of him made her heart race. The mark on your wrist is part of an old bond, one that connects your line to mine. It is more than protection. It carries responsibilities and dangers. Ilara swallowed. Dangers? What kind of dangers? The kind that can threaten your life, Kale said quietly, and the lives of those around you. There are forces that would use your blood for power. Your uncle is only the beginning. Others may come, drawn by the magic in your veins. She looked down at her wrist, feeling the faint warmth of the glowing sigil. I don't understand. Why me? Kale's eyes softened. Because you are Varric blood, and because fate has chosen you. The laws of old magic do not explain why, only that it is so. But you are not alone. I will not let anyone harm you. Not your uncle, not the court, not the shadows that follow this mark. Ilara hesitated, torn between fear and a strange sense of relief. She had never expected someone like him to protect her, much less someone so feared and powerful. Yet the calm authority in his voice was a shield, a promise she could cling to. We cannot stay here, Kale said, breaking her thoughts. The court will not forgive me for defending you so openly. Your uncle will not rest. We must leave, at least for a while, until we understand the full meaning of this mark. Ilara nodded slowly. She had no choice. Staying meant constant danger, constant scrutiny. Moving with Kale, dangerous though it was, offered a chance to learn and survive. By dusk, they left the castle quietly, slipping through hidden passages and forest paths known only to Kale. The wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant earth. The full moon had risen, bathing the forest in silver light, and the shadows seemed alive, whispering secrets and warnings. As they walked, Ilara tried to keep pace with Kale, who moved with the ease and strength of someone born to the wilderness. He was like a shadow on the trail, alert, silent, and impossible to ignore. Every so often she caught the glint of his golden eyes in the moonlight, reminding her of the power he held. You move well for someone unused to the forest, Kale said. You have courage. Ilara smiled faintly. I've had to survive before. I can handle a forest, I think. Kale's lips twitched, almost a smile, but it disappeared quickly. Courage is good, but vigilance is better. There are dangers here that do not walk openly. You must learn to sense them, to anticipate them. It will save your life. Hours passed as they journeyed deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, the shadows longer. Ilara felt a mix of fear and excitement. She had never been outside the castle at night like this, and the moonlit trees seemed both beautiful and threatening. She realized how small she felt next to Kale, yet also strangely safe. Finally, they reached a clearing where a small fire burned. Kale gestured for her to sit on a fallen log, and she obeyed, careful not to get too close. The firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the sharp angles and the intensity of his gaze. Mara the Binder had instructed them to travel to an old altar, a place where the bond between Varric blood and Lycan kings could be understood. The altar lay further into the forest, past the mountains, and had not been used openly in generations. You will need to rest, Kale said, handing her a small cloth to warm her hands. Tomorrow we continue. The altar is far, and the journey will not be easy. There will be trials, tests of courage, wisdom, and trust. Ilara wrapped the cloth around her hands, feeling its warmth. Trust? She asked, looking up at him. Yes, Kale said simply. You must trust me to guide you, to protect you, and I must trust you to act wisely, to make choices that will affect both our lives. She nodded, though doubt lingered. Trust was not easy, not when the world had been cruel, and when the power he held could destroy as easily as it could protect. Yet she felt the sincerity in his words, the quiet strength that radiated from him like the fire between them. That night, sleep was difficult. Ilara dreamed of the court, of her uncle's cruel smile, and of the golden eyes that had saved her. She dreamed of shadows that whispered secrets she could not understand, of a silver light that pulsed against her skin. When she awoke, she found herself alone in the clearing. Kale was gone. Panic rose in her chest, but it was quickly replaced by a soft sound, a howl, low and mournful, coming from the trees. She turned to see Kale standing at the edge of the clearing, his form tall and imposing. His golden eyes met hers, and she felt the pulse of power that seemed to radiate from him. You must follow me, he said, his voice calm but urgent. The altar waits and the path is dangerous. Together they continued through the forest. The night air was crisp, the moon high, and every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made Alara's heart leap. Yet through it all, Kale remained steady, a constant presence at her side. By dawn, they reached a rocky ridge overlooking a valley shrouded in mist. In the center, bathed in silver moonlight, was the altar. Ancient stones worn by time and weather stood in a circle, covered in moss and lichen. It was beautiful and intimidating, a place of power that had not been touched for generations. Mara had instructed them that the ritual at the altar could reveal the full meaning of the bond, but only if approached with courage and clarity. Alara felt her pulse quicken. The air seemed charged, and the mark on her wrist glowed brighter in response. Kale stepped beside her, his presence both comforting and overwhelming. "We face this together," he said. "No harm will come to you as long as we act with caution and respect. The altar will test us, but it will not destroy us if we are wise." Alara took a deep breath, drawing strength from his words. "Together," she repeated, and a small sense of determination filled her chest. They stepped forward, entering the circle of ancient stones. The air vibrated with energy, and the ground seemed to hum beneath their feet. The mark on Alara's wrist pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, as if calling her forward. As Mara had warned, the altar tested them. Shadows rose from the stones, taking forms that reflected their fears. Alara saw visions of her uncle, of the court mocking her, of the dangers that awaited. She felt fear, but she also felt the hand of Kale near hers, steady and strong, a reminder that she was not alone. Together they faced the visions, standing firm. Kale's presence gave her courage, but it was her own resolve that kept her from fleeing. When the shadows finally receded, the altar seemed to accept them. A soft light bathed the clearing, and the bond between Alara and Kale pulsed visibly, a silver thread connecting them. Alara looked at Kale, awe and curiosity mixing in her gaze. "What is this?" she whispered. "The bond," he said simply. "It is old magic, older than the court, older than my kings before me. It protects, but it also warns. We are connected now in ways you may not yet understand. But know this, we are stronger together." Alara nodded, feeling the truth of his words. The journey had been perilous, the night full of fear and uncertainty, yet she had survived. And now, standing in the moonlit altar, she felt the first real sense of hope. A distant sound, however, broke their quiet reflection, a rustle in the forest, deliberate and unnatural. Alara's pulse quickened again. Danger had not passed. The forest still held threats. Yet she felt ready, stronger for what she had endured and strengthened by the bond she now shared with Kale. He stepped closer, but respected her space. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow will bring more challenges, but tonight we have taken the first step, together." Alara took a deep breath, feeling both fear and determination. She had been slapped, humiliated, and threatened, but now she was part of something larger, something powerful, and beside her stood the Lycan king, fierce and protective, yet restrained by honor and respect. The night held its secrets, and the moon watched silently as they settled near the altar, ready to face whatever the dawn would bring. The dawn broke slowly over the forest, spilling pale gold light across the moss-covered stones of the ancient altar. Alara Marin stirred, the warmth of the morning sun contrasting with the chill of the night. Her wrist throbbed softly where the mark glowed faintly in the dim light. She had dreamed again, dreams full of shadows, whispers, and the golden eyes of the Lycan king. Beside her, King Kale Varrock stood silently, gazing across the valley. His posture was tense, as if he sensed every movement in the forest, every shifting shadow. Yet there was a calm in him, the quiet strength that had guided her through the previous night. He turned his gaze toward her, meeting her eyes with a softness that made her chest tighten. "It is time," he said. "The altar's power will reveal what is required of us. There is no turning back." Alara swallowed, feeling a mix of fear and determination. The journey had tested her courage, her trust, and her resolve. She had survived the court's humiliation, the forest's trials, and the awakening of the mark. Now she would face the final step. They stepped together into the center of the circle, where the ancient stones stood like silent sentinels. The air pulsed with energy, and the soft light from the morning sun mingled with a silver glow that rose from the altar itself. The mark on Alara's wrist pulsed stronger, as if responding to the power surrounding them. Mara the binder appeared at the edge of the clearing, her robes brushing the ground. "The bond is ready to be completed," she said, her voice both gentle and commanding. You must face the choice willingly. One of you must offer your blood to seal the connection, or the magic will remain unstable. It will not bind without consent. Alara looked at Kale, whose golden eyes met hers steadily. She could see the weight of the decision in his expression. The king was strong, fierce, and capable of protecting her from anything. Yet the choice belonged to her, as it always had. She took a deep breath. "I will do it," she said, her voice firm. "I will bind my blood with yours. Not because you command me, but because I choose it." Kale's expression softened, relief and respect shining in his gaze. "Then we do this together," he said. He knelt beside her, careful to remain calm, yet his aura of power made the air around them shimmer. The ritual began. Mara chanted in a language older than the forest itself, her words weaving through the air like silver threads. Ilara and Kale each pressed their hands to the altar stones, feeling the cold, rough texture beneath their palms. The mark on Ilara's wrist glowed brighter, extending in delicate lines across her skin, connecting to Kale's hand as if by invisible threads of light. A soft wind rose, rustling the leaves and carrying whispers that only they could hear. The bond pulsed between them, a living thing full of power and understanding. Ilara felt a warmth spread from her wrist throughout her body, and she realized that the connection was not just magical, but emotional. She could sense Kale's thoughts, his intent to protect, his restraint, his respect for her choices. Suddenly the forest shifted, shadows lengthened and moved with intention, rising from the ground like living forms. Ilara's pulse quickened. Danger had not vanished. It had only paused to test them one final time. "Stay close to me," Kale said, his voice low but commanding. "Do not be afraid," Ilara nodded. She felt the bond strengthen, linking her courage to his. The shadows surged forward, taking shapes that reflected their fears. Her uncle's cruel face, the court's judgment, and threats she could not name. She shivered but did not step back. Beside her, Kale's presence was a steady anchor. The shadows recoiled slightly at the bond, as if the magic itself was a shield. Mara's voice rose in chant, louder now, stronger, and the silver threads between Ilara and Kale glimmered brightly. The forest seemed to hold its breath, watching the final act of the ritual. Ilara reached out, her hand brushing against Kale's, feeling the pulse of the bond, the shared strength flowing between them. She realized that this was more than protection. It was a partnership, a promise of trust and loyalty. She did not have to fear him, nor did he have to fear her. They were equals, bound by choice and courage. With a final word from Mara, the bond sealed. Light surged from the altar, enveloping them in warmth and energy. The shadows scattered, dissipating into the morning mist. The forest was silent, peaceful, as if acknowledging the completion of something ancient and sacred. Ilara lowered her hand, feeling the faint warmth of the mark on her wrist. She looked at Kale, and for the first time she saw not just the fierce Lycan king, but a man who had chosen restraint, respect, and care. She smiled, a small, genuine smile that spoke of relief, gratitude, and newfound trust. Kale mirrored her smile, a rare softness crossing his features. "You have done well," he said quietly. "Your courage is greater than you realize, and you have made this bond strong not by magic alone, but by your heart." Ilara felt a wave of emotion rise within her. She had faced fear, danger, and humiliation, yet she had emerged not broken but stronger. She had chosen her path, faced the trials, and now shared a bond that was powerful and equal. The quiet was broken by the distant sound of movement. Ilara stiffened, but Kale's hand on her shoulder was reassuring. "It is nothing that can harm us," he said. "The bond protects, and our courage has proven stronger than the fear." They spent the day near the altar, resting and preparing for the journey back to the castle. The forest seemed friendlier now, the trees casting gentle shadows rather than threatening ones. Ilara realized that she had changed, grown stronger and more confident. She could face the court, her uncle, and any other challenge with courage. As night fell, they made camp near a small stream. The water reflected the silver light of the moon, and the forest hummed with life. Kale built a small fire, and they sat together in quiet companionship. Ilara broke the silence. "Do you think my uncle will stop?" she asked, her voice low. Kale shook his head. "No, but he will not have the power to harm you. The bond is stronger than his ambition, and I will not allow him to hurt you. We will face whatever comes together." Ilara nodded, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in years. Together, she repeated. They shared stories quietly, learning about each other. Kale spoke of the pack, the traditions of the Lycan kings and the burdens of leadership. Alara spoke of her life in the court, the challenges of surviving in a world ruled by politics and ambition. Each story built understanding. Each word strengthened the bond that was more than magic. It was trust and respect. Later, as they rested, Alara felt the warmth of the bond pulsing gently through her veins. She knew that the trials were not over. Her uncle still schemed, the court still whispered, and the world was full of unknown dangers. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. She had chosen to face the world with Kale by her side, and that choice gave her strength. The fire crackled softly, and the moon cast its silver light over the clearing. Alara leaned back, feeling the night settle around them. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Not because someone had promised protection, but because she had chosen it, and because the king beside her had chosen restraint and honor. Morning came again, and they prepared to return to the castle. The journey back was quiet, reflective. The forest seemed to acknowledge their victory, the trees swaying gently as if in approval. The bond between them pulsed softly, a constant reminder of courage, trust, and the choices that had brought them here. As they reached the edge of the forest, the first sight of the castle appeared. Alara's heart quickened. She knew the court would not welcome them without challenge. Lord Varen would scheme, whisper, and try to reclaim control. But she felt ready. She had faced trials greater than any insult, greater than fear, and she had not faced them alone. Kale stopped at the edge of the forest, turning to her. "Are you ready?" he asked. Alara nodded. "I am." "Together." He offered his hand and she took it, feeling the warmth of the bond between them. Together they stepped toward the castle, their steps steady, confident, and unafraid. Inside, the court awaited. Whispers rose at their approach, but the golden eyes of the Lycan king, the confidence of Alara Marin, and the bond they shared silenced doubt. Lord Varen's expression twisted in anger and disbelief. How?" he stammered. Alara looked at him calmly, her hand resting on the mark of the bond. "We have chosen," she said simply, "and nothing you do can undo that." Kale's presence alone made the court tremble. The shadow of fear and power had shifted, and now Alara stood not as a victim, but as a participant in a force greater than ambition or cruelty. The Lycan king's voice carried through the hall, calm but commanding. "The bond is complete. You will not harm her, nor will you interfere in what has been chosen freely." Lord Varen's lips pressed tight. The court murmured, uncertain, but none dared challenge Kale openly. The ancient laws of blood and honor had been honored, and the bond was stronger than any threat. Ilara's chest lifted with quiet pride. She had faced danger, humiliation, and fear, yet she had emerged with courage and choice intact. She had bound herself willingly, shared her strength with Kale, and faced the world with new resolve. The king stepped beside her, offering a quiet nod. "You have done well," he said softly, "and the bond will protect us both. Whatever comes, we will face it together."